Okay, we're back working on the Buick Grand National. Last video we were putting the turbo back together and we stripped the oil feed line, the hard line that runs from the block up to the turbo to feed it oil continuously. That flared connection, not the flare itself was hurt, but the nut actually stripped, and I assume perhaps maybe this guy is stripped as well, the brass fitting that I installed new last time. I'll take a look at that. I'm going to attempt to make a new line. I've got a couple pieces of straight hard line, a tube bender, and a reflaring tool. I think I'll have to cut the tube short because the piece is a little long right now, and reflare it. So it's the first time I've used that flare tool. It should be fun. Again, these are double flares. So what you do with the tube when you cut it off, you see we cut it nice and flat, file it smooth so we don't have any sharp edges that can eventually crack. We take that tube and we form it into a bulge first, and then we actually flare that bulge in so the material is folded on itself, and that gives it the strength that it needs to not split and crack over time. So we'll get to work. Looking down in the engine, a little hard to see, but there's a brass block that the tube will screw into, and I have to feed that up and get it right here to the inlet of the turbo. Once I have that finished, I can put the exhaust back together and a couple little things together, and we can start this thing up and start tuning with that new Mega Squirt ECM, which I'm really excited for. Okay, so I guess first things first is I'll go get the tube. Piece of straight length tube, very common. Every auto parts store sells them. Usually they have them in the back behind where the employees are, and they've got them hanging in a row. This, in this case, is I believe it's 1/4 inch steel tube. I ripped the tag off, and usually the tags are ripped off in the first place. You can never read the dang things. But I know this is the size I need, and what it always comes with is one short one, one long one. I don't know why they do that. I guess I have the option, do I want to put the long one on top or bottom? I don't know if it makes a difference. I think I'll just pick randomly. And so looking in here, well, I guess first of all I'll show you the bending tool I got. This is only like 25 or 30 bucks at, through Amazon. And I've used it before, and this thing is pretty slick, so should make nice smooth bends. And I'll go ahead and start. One thing you want to always do when you make a bend, make sure the nut is down here so that when you bend it, the nut's going to be where you need it to be. If this nut was up here and you made a nice sharp bend in this thing, you might not be able to slide your nut back to it. You might not even notice that until you've gone a lot farther on the job and then realize the tube is worthless because the nut is not down here. So always start with that nut down here at the very end. And looking in there, it looks like I just need to make about a 90-degree turn heading up north, and pretty tight. It might actually be more of a 90 because it has to be so tight to that thing. So we open this up, take our tube, again get that nut down there, set this on the appropriate size here. I'm going to do this as close as I can to that nut. And then you close this guy. You'll see that the 0 lines up with 0. Okay, see I'm pretty close to that nut. And I'm just going to go right off the bat, I'm going to go for 90 degree. And you'll see how nicely this thing does. Stop right there at 90 degree. And we'll loosen it up. Take the tube out. You've got a nice little bend there. So I'm going to feed it down here. Unfortunately, you won't be able to see a lot of what I'm seeing. But I'll feed it and see if I can get this thing to screw in at all. Yeah, it's just what I thought. So what I should do is probably look at the old tube and see, kind of get a general idea of what they did. Maybe I'll stop and do that first. So this is the old tube, and I assume it's original. It's got all sorts of complex bends, and I was going to try to reproduce it just looking at it and bending it on a bench, maybe do it back home and bring it here to the car, but I realized that's too difficult. And I looked at my car, my Chevelle, that I have the same engine, and I looked at the tube I have because I couldn't remember what I had done or what I had, and I had bent my own tube and reflared it. I'd done this before, but some things are a little different. He's got a different oil drain line because his block actually is an 84-85 block. The oil drain doesn't go into the block in the same spot. Instead, it routes down to the oil pan. And if you look down there, you'll see that blue hose is the oil drain. You can see just barely this what do you call that, corrugated tube coming out of the turbo is the stock tube that we cut off, stuck it inside this blue tube with a hose clamp, and then that, or the blue hose, and that blue hose runs to a fitting on the oil pan. And again, that's because this is an 87 Buick Grand National, but the engine block we have is an 84 or an 85, so it was meant for a hot air car or a car that's not intercooled. It works, and the reason we use that is it's a block somebody had built, we got for a good price, and it had a roller cam in it. So this car does have a roller cam. And so looking at the old tube, you might wonder which side was up. And I think I know which side is up because this is the side that's stripped. So I know that was the top because that's where I stripped it last time. I swear it's not my fault. The thing is old. So looking at this, I had made a 90-degree on my new tube, and it looks like I need to make, oh gosh, what is that, a whole, about 145 degree, not quite a 180, so we'll go to that. So I'll stick this tube back in here in my bender, make sure that nut's where it needs to be, close this back up. You can see it closes right at 90, right where it was. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to about 145 degree. This thing will do a full 180, but it doesn't need to be that height or that tight. Maybe I'll hold this up for comparison. I'd say that was a damn good guess. That's 145 degrees, is that? Give or take. And that's looking pretty good. Maybe I can go get a Sharpie. Now that I've done that, I'll make a little mark here, and I'll go ahead and make the next bend. Sharpie. Okay. We'll set this here nicely. Hold the two tubes up. And make a little mark. So I'll pull the tube out, and you can see my little mark I made there. And I'm going to stick this tool in here, stick the tube in the tool, find the pen cap I dropped. Sharpies are a hot commodity around here. And then hold the tube here and just think about which direction I need to bend this guy. Put my mark on the 0, and I need to rotate this guy around because I'm trying to bend him the other way. And if I hold this tube like that, then I suppose I can rotate this one. And give it a go. Looks like I need to go a little bit further. Stop a little bit every so often. A little bit more. Okay. Now I'm going to take it out of the tool and just slide it down to see how that's working out. Oh yeah, I'm happy with this. I've already got the nut threaded in. Okay, if you can just see down there, this is the new tube I've made. It's coming up. It's close to touching the electrical cable, but I can shift the cable over. That's the negative post for the or the negative battery cable. And as you can see, the tube is coming up pretty well straight. It just needs to sort of take a 90-degree right about right there. So this might be a much easier job than I was expecting. Now, how do I keep my orientation? I'm going to make a mark. And when I pull this tube out where that mark is, I want to bend it just 5 degrees this way. Make that thing a little straight, so it's, as you can see, it's coming out this angle. I'll go ahead and put a little 5-degree thing to straighten that out, and then I'll make the final 90-degree turn to go to the fitting. Again, pay attention to where your nut is. If I went and made the next bend, not thinking about it, then this nut could get stuck because it's the tall nut, and the tall nut doesn't want to work around a corner. As you can see right now, this thing will not go around this bend. So make sure you have your nuts where you need them to be, which is way far away from the bend. Make your bends, and then your nut will be there. In this case, I'll have to cut the tube, and before I flare the tube, I'll put that nut back on. I don't know how many times I've flared a tube, looked at it, it's great, realized the nut's not even on there. So that can be pretty frustrating. So I'll get this tube, open it up. Stick it on the right channel. I say the right channel, this thing has 3 sets of grooves for different diameter tubes. So you pick the one that's right for the tube you're using. This is actually a really useful, really neat tool. Well made and simple. So what I need to do is bend it towards this way on the tube. So I will rotate this guy about there. Stop and think about it. If I bend it this way, then that's the way I want. I said 5 degrees, so I'll go 10. Just before there. Just a slight little bend. And I'm going to check the fitment again. Okay, I've got it threaded in again, and now you can see the tube is running vertical, just like it should be. Now, what we need to figure out is how do we get this thing, where do we make our mark so that when we line it up in the tool, our bend actually comes out from where it is. I'm going to take a little test bend. I'm going to make a mark. Higher up on the tube where I know I'm not going to need to use that area. Put this guy in the tool. And make a bend. And I want to see, does the bend, where does the tube actually end up? Is it right up in here? Or does it end up lower or higher? And it's hard to explain what I'm trying to think. What I'm trying to do here. Okay. So we can see that when we make a mark and make a bend, the resulting leg of the tube will actually end up higher than the mark. So I made a mark right here, and the actual tube ended up about 3/4 or 7/8 of an inch higher than where the mark is. So now I know that I want my leg of my tube to line up right here with this brass fitting. I need to make my mark 3/4 or 7/8 of an inch lower than that fitting. So I'll make one mark there, take my tube off, take the tube off, slide my nut up, because we're not going to go this far and make that mistake. Stick the tube in the tool. I'm going to sort of line this up. Have my mark right there on 0. But again, I need to slide it up about 3/4 of an inch. So maybe I'll line the mark up with here rather than lining it up with the 0 marks. There's my little mark. It's hard to see. Now I'll kind of orient myself to make sure that when I make the bend, it's going in the right direction. So that's where my tube is. I want to bend that way. So this is just one of those things you sort of have to think about every time you're doing it. Maybe I want to flip the tool around. This will be easier to think about. Yeah, this will be easier to think about. Now I notice there's a little mark right there. And I wonder if I put my mark lined up with that, that's probably the appropriate place such that when I bend this, the leg of the tube will end up where it needs to be. I never said I was an expert with this tool, but you know. Some things you just figure out as you go. Now I think that's the appropriate way. When I bend this, it's gonna be going forward, so I'm gonna go ahead and shoot for it and go for a full 90. Okay. Again, here's my nut. It's in the right spot. It's not down here where I've ruined my job. Now, I'm going to go ahead and cut this piece off real quick. I'll take the camera over here with me. I'm working without a vise today. We're sort of setting up this new garage here, and we don't quite have the vise installed. We've just got a little vise in this garage anyways, but I'm going to have to improvise. Maybe I'll take a clamp here. This will help me out a little bit. Now I need to find this guy. I'm going to go ahead and change out the blade. This is, I think, a 24 tooth blade, but I'd like to put a finer tooth, so I brought some new 32 teeth per inch blades, and those are real fine. That'll give a nice smooth cut. I won't need much filing to make it smooth for the flare. This is a really good hacksaw. If you need a good hacksaw, this is a Lennox. I've tried all those shitty hacksaws that kind of come apart and everything. They never hold the blade. They never put a good tension. You try cranking on that screw and it strips and everything. This thing has been a beast right here, this Lennox. This guy, set him over here, and hopefully find the new blades that I brought. Here we go. And I don't know if these are good or whatever, Milwaukee, super tough bimetal, but it's 32 teeth per inch. It even says on there, handle end. So we'll set that in the tool properly. Cinch it up, put the blade in, and tighten it down. See, it even says more tension, more cuts. And you can really get You can almost hear that. Is that a G note or something? I'm not musically inclined. Although I did play the trumpet. Ooh, that's more of a, that's a little higher note. Plenty tight. So I'm going to cut this long because right now I just want to get rid of this bend. And right now it doesn't matter. The nut's going to come off, but again, I have to remember to put that nut back on before I flare it. But I'm going to cut this now. This is going to be tricky without a vise. There we go. I'm going to take this nut now, do myself a favor, blow any chips going out that way first. I'm going to set this nut on here and put a little piece of tape. This will hold the nut on so I won't forget about it when I make the flare. We're going to do one last little fit check. I installed 5 more LED fluorescent tube lights in the shop today in this little garage. And 5 additional lights in a garage like this does a lot. There's 2 more up here I put. Hopefully that gives a little better light for these videos. A lot of times when making these videos, I'll open the garage door, but it's pretty cold. It's raining right now. Right now we're in Bremerton, Washington. And it looks like I need to bend this thing. If we take a look, here's where the tube sits. I need to bend this guy down. Actually, the tube is a little high, so I need to bend him. How will I do this? I might make a little bend down in here to make this whole thing back, and then make this guy a lot sharper to send him where he needs to be. I'll go ahead and make a mark. Way down in there. I'm going to bend him backwards. Hopefully that wasn't a mistake. I have to take my tape off now to rebend this thing. I'll set the nut down there and hopefully not forget it. So I made 2 bends there. We'll see if any of them did what I wanted it to. Hey, not bad. Okay, so that's not looking too bad. I'll probably do a little hand forming right now, just to get it so this little bend doesn't stick out so far. This car, we're not going for perfect originality, so that's pretty good right there. I suppose I'll cut it there, put the nut on, and we'll try to flare it. Try that new tool. Luckily this tube is soft enough that you can kind of, when you get the major bends into it, if you need to tweak it a little bit, you can just do that with your hands, and you find you can actually make some really good lines. On my Chevelle I made tranny cooling lines, oil feed line. I've made some various vacuum lines, fuel pressure lines, all with these kind of tools. And when you make it out of this, like when you do the fuel lines like I did with stainless steel, that stuff is much harder, and you are not going to bend that with your hands. I mean, it's extremely strong stuff. It's hard to bend with the tool. You actually have to press in it. This stuff is really soft and frankly really easy to manipulate. Right now I'm just making minor tweaks just to sort of, I noticed it was touching the oxygen sensor down here, and there's no sense having it touch that and translate some of the heat from the exhaust into this thing and have it vibrate and touch and eventually wear a hole in the oil line. So make sure it's free of all obstacles, so I feel along the line as I'm going, and then as I come back I'm going to check this thing, and you know, that's looking really good. So I'm going to make a mark. And then I'm going to find a good way to cut this tube. I'll have to put it in a clamp so I can get a nice straight cut. Okay, we're going to grab the nut, stick her on there so we don't forget the thing. And right now this is what the tube looks like. Nice steep bend down at the bottom, a couple of little bends to keep it away from things. And there's my mark. So I'm going to come up with a good way to cut this thing. I'll cut the video right now and we'll come back. Okay, we're back. I've got a plan to mount this vise, and then I'm going to use the new tube bending tool to clamp the tube into while I make the cut. So I'll go ahead and mount this vise right now. Stick this first screw in there first. No battery. Of course, using an impact with a swivel socket. Let's see how well this goes right now. Okay, that didn't go very well. Underneath this white thing, it's got a piece of folded sheet metal. So I might need to take this white piece off drill that sheet metal up a little bigger. Yeah. Somebody had built this bench. I think it's pretty cool for a... It's not common to be living in the city to have a detached garage like this. And I never got to see it before they moved in here. This is my parents' house. But apparently the guy had this place full of all of his tools and everything. He's got little hangers for everything, and we've yet to really organize the place and, you know, find our own way to get organized and use the place. But he built this nice bench, and yeah, it's sort of nice to move into a garage that already has some stuff in place, and here we are. And that little hole I drilled, and just open it up a little bit so that lag bolt can get through it. Okay, don't go too deep because I don't want to open up the hole in the wood. Yeah. Okay, let's try this round 2. Much better. So, of course, folks, what did I forget? I forgot to put the white piece back. So, I started drilling it. I put the first hole in there. I tried to drive the lag screw. It wouldn't go because of this metal sheet. So I take the white sheet away, open up the hole in this metal sheet a little bit so the lag bolt to get through, drive the lag screw home, realize I didn't put this white sheet back.
In a hurry. Killer drill.
Appears to be lined up pretty well. And then I'll drive that lag screw back home. Change bits to cut the hole in that metal sheet. Okay, and that should do it. And the other lag bolt. and that'll do. That'll work. I needed a good way to get a nice clean cut on this tube, and that's why I had to put the vise in, but I'll need the vise anyways to use this new tool. This is a new flaring tool that I've never used before. It's by Tool Guy Republic. I think it's the same as the Eastwood tool and the K-Tool brand of double flare tool. I guess it'll do single flare and double flare. Again, I've never used this before, so I might cut the camera while I read some instructions. It comes with these little blocks for different size tubes, and I need to find the blocks for the 1/4" tube that I'm using. So this one says 1/4, that should be it. And I know that when I go to flare this tool, or flare this line, I need the nut to be on here at the time. So I can't make my cut any shorter. I can't cut this tube any shorter than right there, because that's where this tube actually needs to fly. And I should read the instructions. I probably have to leave at least a 1/2 inch on this thing. So I'm going to slide this up here, put this guy together, and stick him in the vise. Way too far there. This must be very entertaining. Okay, I've got the tube clamped up in the block, and I'm going to use my saw. I'm going to run my saw right along the face of this to get a nice clean cut. Let's start with doing that. Okay, I read the instructions a bit, and apparently the tube just needs to be flush with this, so I slid it back as far as I could. I left myself probably a 1/4 inch away from this nut, so hopefully that'll be good. Come back with our handy dandy skill saw. Take a file and smooth this thing out and make it nice and flat. Make a nice The blocks of this tool should be really hard, very hard steel, so I should be able to file right along the face here and get a nice, smooth tube cut. You want it to be very, very smooth so that you don't have any little cracks or ridges that when you cut it open or flare it, it wants to crack at that location. see how much the camera can pick up. Should be nice and flat, smooth right now. Now I'll take this out of the tube and run a little. Do you have a little sandpaper?
Yeah.
Well, just to take off the edges there. Now this is what the tube looks like. It's got some burrs, so I'll take a little fine sandpaper to take those off, and they're not much. Maybe I should use a little diamond thing here.
That'll do it. Yeah. Yeah, this paper's a little too fine.
Oh yeah, that works well. I'll have to clean this tube out really well so we're not introducing little diamond bits into the engine, right? The point here is not to actually put a chamfer on this edge, but just to deburr. I want to get the small burrs that are inside this tube as well. Okay. It's looking pretty good. Should be flat, smooth, deburred. I've got my nut back here, very important. This tool looks like it comes with a place to clamp. You stick it in the vise like this. Tighten it down. And then has this rotated, this little piece here that you rotate. You find, for every size tube, there's two knobs. There's a quarter, and there's a quarter here, and it looks like one of them will make the bubble in the tube, will flare it outward into a bubble, and then it'll cave itself in. So it looks like I need this piece right here. So align that there, pull the pin, open it up. Might have to be putting this thing in wrong. This is the first time I've used it. There we go, that's much better.
guy down. This looks like a pretty slick tool. There we go. Ah, this thing's pretty cool. Okay. Reef on this thing. Get that nice and tight in there. Now, grab the handle. We make one last read of the directions. Place the tube between the die halves with the tube end flush with the flared end of the die. Oh. Select the split die size that you need. Ooh. Okay, let's see how well that worked. Oh yeah. That's looking pretty good. I put that domed out bevel there, and that looks like it's going to make a great flare. And I did not forget the nut. Rotate that tool around. Put our tube back in. Close the blue hatch, insert the pin, slightly tighten here, read the directions again. Spin rotating die head with one of the two appropriate sizes. Rotating die head. Okay. Move lever against tool body. Give her a crank. That looks pretty good.
Good picture of that.
Just thought it'd be cool to show the new tube up against the old tube here. If I hold these so the flares are aligned, you can see they're relatively close there. They end up coming out at the same angle, same spot right there. I'd say that's a pretty good job done. Okay, so I'm going to end this video, show you how the tube is installed. In the last video, when we stripped the tube, it did strip the brass fitting here, and I didn't want to go out today and get another fitting. I'll do that throughout the week, and then next weekend I come over here. We'll install that fitting, hook up the tube, but if you take a look, here's the bottom of the tube running up, and it fishes its way up through here. And look at the end result with the nice new flare, and that's going to attach perfectly right there on a new brass fitting when we get one. So I guess to end this video, ask that you like, comment, and abonniere.